All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order at 5:02 p.m. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the Goethe International Charter School Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As a citizen of the world, I will follow Goethe's circle of learning. Curiosity opens my mind, ideas lead to knowledge, responsible choices show respect, cooperation strengthens others, learners are courageous, empathy creates community.
Als ein Bürger dieser Welt folge ich dem Kreis des Lernens. Neugierig, ideenreich, respektvoll, kooperativ, mutig, empathisch.
Moving on to roll call. Frank?
Here.
Sam?
Here.
Pete?
Here.
Katrin?
Here.
I'm here as well. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
That's from Sam. All in favor? Frank?
Yes.
Sam?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
That is a yes for me as well. Public comment? Go ahead, Casey.
The public may comment on any item that is on the agenda or any other item that is in the board's jurisdiction. Members of the public who wish to comment during the board meeting may use the raise hand tool on the Zoom platform or raise their hand if attending in person. Individual comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and the total time for this purpose shall not exceed 30 minutes per meeting. If an interpreter is needed for comments, they will be translated to English, and the time limit shall be 6 minutes. Individuals may speak 1 time per subject. The Board of Trustees reserves the right to mute or remove a member of the public if comments or actions disrupt the board meeting. Board members are prohibited from responding to or commenting on matters raised by the public that are not on the agenda. And at this time, it does not look like there is any public comment. I think we lost you, Seer.
Well, Sam, can you then take over?
Sure. Thank you. So with no comment, let's move to the consent agenda. The only item that's on the consent agenda today is the approval of the regular board meeting minutes of September 18th. I will move that those be approved. Frank, do you approve?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
I approve as well.
I think Yasir is back.
Yasir is back.
Great. We'll turn it back over. We did the
Consent,
consent item, so we're
Yes,
back to you.
Are you also approving the
Yes.
minute? Okay, thank you.
All right. The first item for discussion is an update on the agility timeline based on a revised timeline that the board has requested from Agility, a recommended timeline. Casey, if you wouldn't mind sharing the screen.
So in theory, Christina should join. We just were on a meeting with Nora, and Nora said she'd join at 5:10. She didn't think that we would be that quick, but
Do we need her, Biggie, or do we can just go through the timeline and the essence of
I mean,
we don't need her.
Okay.
Biggie, if you can just turn this to the timeline. So ultimately the what we've done is we've pushed the hiring a month, where originally we were going to post the job description in October. We are now pushing it to mid-November. And you can see the timeline there. And the goal is to make an offer around March.
I think he froze again.
I think there he is.
Did I freeze? Sorry.
We need to get you back into civilization with a proper internet connection. Yeah.
I don't need an internet connection. Horses don't use internet.
Okay.
Okay, you guys can hear me? Yes? Okay, good.
Yes.
So what I was saying was the major changes have been that previous we were going to the job description was posting was going to be put up in October, late September, early October. That's moved to mid-November. And then the official hire offer, the timeline for that milestone is going to be in March, based on the feedback from the current administrative leadership team. With that, I'm just going to pause for comments from Biggie and Casey. And once you guys are done, Frank, you can, if you have any questions or comments, you can.
So with Nora in the meeting just before this, she said that they would be launching the job posting on the 27th of November. So the Monday right after Thanksgiving break. And she said that it was a good decision to push it back because she's right now working on a hiring of an ED and what did she say, Casey? An ED and one other person. And she said she only has a third of the applications that she usually has. So she thought that it's good to be with the regular school cycle application timeframe, which means posting in November and then going through the motions and hiring some point in March. And I think it works fine for us. We had said that before. It would almost be overwhelming to have to do interviews right now, but we'll be looking forward to doing them in February. I think she said February is when the search committee will be involved for the first time.
Frank, questions, comments?
Neither.
Sam?
None from me.
Pete?
Just a comment that if we're not really going to be interviewing until February, I think it's pretty optimistic that we'll be hiring somebody in March. But other than that, I guess that's fine.
I think it might be misleading. She said that they would be starting already in December. So they, when she said candidate, maybe Yasir, you can go down one more slide or one more even. She said there is some point the timeline, and she said they would be starting in December with the first
round interviews
that come in, and then the search committee only starts with the semi-finalist interviews. So everything that happens before the semi-finalists they are doing, and that happens in December and January. So it's definitely not only in February. In February we should be at the semi-finalist stage.
Zoe, I told your mama.
I see Christina's here. Christina, you want to add some color? And we'll let you go real fast.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions that folks have. Biggie, thanks for I hope I didn't join. I was told 5:10. Hopefully I didn't join late, but thanks for adding whatever color information. Yeah, I don't know if people have questions or if there are things you'd like me to fill in gaps or if you're feeling good.
Pete, any follow-ups? You good?
No, I'm good now. Thanks.
All right, Katrin?
I don't have any specific follow-ups. No, I think maybe an internal discussion topic would be communication with the search committee, but no specific questions at this point.
Thank you. So just so the board is aware, we are going to have a meeting with Agility and the search committee one more time, as you know, they're the major stakeholder group to make sure, and we want to make sure that they know that we've pushed things back to get the ideal candidate for the organization. And Christina, that meeting is scheduled to be when is?
I don't have it in front of me, but I can pull it up.
It's in October, right? Like it's in the next few days.
No,
Yeah.
Nora said, November 13th is the next.
November 13th. Got it.
So
Okay.
2 weeks before the launch. That's how
Okay.
she
Right,
said.
and we'll just remind everybody of the process and what's going to happen and get organized. Yeah. But we're
Perfect.
available if folks have questions in the meantime. Of course, they can feel free to reach out. And I feel good. I mean, I know many of us do. I feel really good about the revised timeline in terms of really giving us time to do what we need to do to get our ducks in a row. So I think that'll work really well.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Christina, for joining, and we appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.
All right, Casey and Biggie, you want to start with the leadership?
Is it me, or do we have audio?
No.
We have audio.
Yeah. Sorry. I was just getting the document pulled up. Okay, Biggie, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so the first update that we're always giving is regarding the enrollment. As you all know, we based our budget this year on 430 students with 95% ADA. And currently we have 440 students enrolled. That's 10 over budget. Most grade levels are fully enrolled. We have 73 students on the wait list. Unfortunately, those students are in grade levels that are already fully enrolled. So we can't put more students in these classes, whereas some of the other classes are not to 100% enrolled, but we don't have students on the wait list for those. The enrollment has stabilized. There wasn't a big change between the first week of school and where we're standing now. However, we've experienced over the years that there's always minor adjustments throughout the year. Some students move away, others join the school. So it's a little up and down, but I think we'll hold stable around that area of 440 students. And with the 440 students at this point, we would not have to expect any over allocation penalties for this school year, because our agreement is based on 310 students. Out of the 440, we have about 70% in-district students. And when these in-district students are calculated with the ADA rate, we're getting to around 300. So we're a little below what we have in our agreement, but it's not a big enough gap that we would be hit with over allocation penalties for this year if we hold our enrollment stable at 440, and if the percentage of in-district and out-of-district students also hold stable at the 70-30, where we stand right now, roughly. Are we doing questions now, or are we later? So this is just an overview how the students are in the grade levels. The overall is an average of 24.5 students per class. You can see some classes are a little smaller than other classes, but here in 3rd and 4th grade, where the students are already, the classes are already pretty full, you can see those are the grade levels where we have students on the wait list. And then in 8th grade or in 6th grade, where we could put a few more students, there are no students on the wait list. So that's why we have those on the wait list and not more students enrolled.
Biggie, I'm fine with taking questions right now if the board has any.
Okay.
Frank, any questions, comments?
No comments, except that we haven't adjusted the budget to the new numbers, which is
Sam?
greater, and we're not going to.
Yeah, agreed. Sam?
No questions at this time. Thanks.
Pete?
Yeah, thanks. I'm curious what our threshold is because it seems somewhat inconsistent in terms of class size. So for example, in 5th grade, we have looks like 48 and 3 on the waiting list. So it seems as if you could admit 2 more there.
That's correct. Those 3 on the wait list, it's a little misleading. These are students that will move here in the next couple of months. So those are students that we will enroll as soon as they are moved here, but right now they are just not here.
And then maybe you can ask some of those in the 2nd grade wait list if they'd like to go back to 1st grade.
Yeah, exactly.
Because ours is so good.
It's just really sometimes unfortunate that we have all these students on the wait list exactly for the grade levels that we don't have the space for.
Do we somewhere in our advertisements claim to have a certain class size?
Not in the advertisements. When we do school tours, we say that we're shooting for 25 per class. As you can see in 4th grade, there are 27. That happens sometimes when siblings come along or when we are already fully enrolled from last year. And for example, this year in 4th grade, one of the new teachers brought a student that we just couldn't say no to enrolling that student. But typically we say that we're going for 25 students per class.
Okay, thanks.
Katrin?
No questions at this point. Thanks.
All right, Biggie, go ahead.
That's Casey here.
So we unfortunately are still in the same situation with our 2 full-time teaching positions that we're looking to fill, the one German kindergarten and then the English 4th grade. Those are still being filled by long-term substitutes, the same ones that we have talked about in previous meetings. We do, though, have an interview coming up for one of the positions, actually the German position. So hopefully we'll have happier news to share soon about at least one of these positions, but we continue to post these weekly so that they're at the top of every list and reach out to all of our connections to see if there are any quality teachers that are looking for positions. We also have been able to bring on a few of new staff to fill our open instructional assistant positions. We had 2 open positions when we started the year, and those have been filled, one in 1st grade. The 2nd grade, as we reported on Friday, was still open. However, we offered the position to someone and then just today they accepted. So that 2nd grade instructional assistant position now will be filled. So that's great news. We're excited to bring those new staff members on. But one of the other things we've identified as we've gone through these first couple months of school is really the need for additional support, particularly with student behaviors in our lower elementary grades. So specifically for 2nd grade, some of our new students coming in and the new dynamics that we have, there might be the need for additional support for those students. So we will keep you updated as we go through the process of determining interventions and supports for students and whether anyone might be in need of additional staffing for our 1st, 2nd grade groups there. Any staffing questions before I move us along?
I don't have any. If board members, if you have any questions, just raise your hand or raise your hand in the Zoom and then we can stop. Otherwise, let's just keep going.
For Prop 39, we are collecting intent to enroll forms until October 25th. As you all know, the application is due on or before November 1st. Right now, we have all forms back from our own students, so the 419, because obviously 8th grade students won't give us intent to return forms for next year. So those 21 deducted is 419. And as I mentioned before, the current enrollment is about 70 to 30% in district, out of district. That means only those 70% in district students will count towards space that will be allocated from LAUSD. Our plan is to apply for 19 classrooms. That would be 2 sections each for kindergarten through 8th grade. So next year we would be having a full middle school with 2 class sections in each grade level and still having 1 section of transitional kindergarten. The timeline for Prop 39 applications, just mentioning quickly, is we apply by November 1st, and then LAUSD comes back to us on December 1st to say, yes, your ADA determination for or proposition for next school year seems reasonable, or they come back and say, no, it's too high. Then they give us their number. We can then again rebuttal, but the first preliminary offer comes on February 1st, and then the final offer comes on April 1st, and we need to accept on or before May 1st. I see Katrin has her hand up.
Go ahead, Katrin.
Thanks. Question about TK. So with TK being our longest wait list, and I know that I think the TK teacher availability and the need for teachers, more teachers due to smaller class sizes was sort of always the limiting factor. But we still have such a robust wait list. Should we maybe take that into account and think about perhaps 2 TK classes? I don't know. So I would love to hear sort of your thoughts on that topic.
I mean, Casey can also chime in. I think it's a year too early for us to go for 2 TK sections because we don't want to grow too much too quickly, especially with the situation right now that we're not sure if we can stay on our campus or not with all that resolution stuff going on. So we're already growing 1 classroom for the 8th grade next year. And the TK, yes, next year TK will go up to June 2nd. So that's the pretty much then the full year. We're getting full on 4-year-olds into school then, and they will only turn 5 by June of that year, pretty much right when they graduate. And our teachers, it's just still an adjustment process for them to learn how to handle these really young students when they come into TK. And I think it makes sense to give it another year until we have the experience and then hopefully also the classroom space to fill 2 TK positions. But Casey, maybe.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add is that every year the date range for eligibility for TK has expanded. So we don't have any idea of what our actual lottery numbers are going to be like for TK once, because we're following the same guidelines as the rest of the state. We're not doing any early admittance. So by the time next year we have that full date range open, so will all the other schools. And so I think that year will be the year to also give us the data of how many applications are we getting now that everyone needs to have that same range open. And is that going to be enough to sustain 2 TK classrooms moving forward? Because I think neither Biggie nor I want to open 2 TK classrooms and then have to go back down to 1 if we just don't have enough applications to sustain that 2 classes at a grade. What we anticipate based on the numbers we've seen is that we should have enough. But I think giving us next year to really make sure that what we're anticipating for applications is indeed what we're getting is helpful in that further expansion the following year.
Also, LAUSD is right now already accepting up to September 2nd. So they are right now the cutoff date is April 2nd. So LAUSD is accepting students that are April, May, June, July, August, September, 5 months, basically lower in age than what they should be from the state requirement. And so a lot of parents might also just go to LAUSD when they have really young students or already have gone to LAUSD this year. So like Casey said, we have to just see how the situation develops with everybody having the June 2nd date next year and LAUSD still doing the September 2nd, how the available students kind of are distributed across all the schools that are offering TK programs.
Okay, thank you both. I mean, it seems like from a perspective of school growth, TK is going to be probably the most important entry point, right? And so just growing our school means getting more people into, or more little kids into the TK program. But I totally understand the need to just sort of learn and see as we go, and that's a fluid situation. Thank you.
We just need to be ready then to grow much more also, because once we take 2 sections of TK, that means we will need to take 3 sections of kindergarten the following year, because if you already have 2 sections of TK coming up, then you don't have any open spots for kindergarten kids that don't meet the age criteria for TK, but want to enter at the K level. So then you bring up 2 classes of TK into 2 classes of K, then you don't have openings. So that means once we do that, we will grow into 3 kindergarten classes most likely. And then it's a whole growth pattern for the school, which also means then we need to think about facilities, because here on this campus, there is not enough space to grow over the years, because once you have 3 kindergartens, you'll have 3 first grades, and it goes on and on. So then the school in overall will grow, which is not a bad thing, but then you again have 3 sections per grade level, which might have with the German English some sort of challenge. So the second section of TK is a bigger decision to make, because it has a whole bunch of follow up things in the following years that you have to deal with.
Right, thank you.
And then Sam.
Thanks. I was actually interested in the same line of questioning that Katrin brought up, because I think that in this next year, we have a lot of information that we're going to learn both through the lottery and the acceptance about whether kindergarten itself holds up as its own independent entry point, or if the entry point really is at TK. And I know, this is the first year that we really had kind of that true expansion at the TK level from December to April. So, that helps explain why we had so many more applications for TK this year to run a separate class. But I think we really need to pay attention to the numbers of applications and comparisons to lottery applications and waitlist acceptance to see how that impacts our first grade, or I'm sorry, our kindergarten next year, to see, because I think we don't have enough information yet to know how that impacts kindergarten as a point of entry. So if you guys can pay really close attention to those numbers and help analyze those numbers, and also to analyze, when you're seeing the wait list and the comparison of TK, and when we're looking at our in-district enrollment versus out-of-district enrollment, are those balanced equally among the grades, or are there certain entry points that we might actually be attracting more in-district enrollment that might also help us with some of our Prop 39 if we get to continue that? So I'd like to see that kind of analysis happening as we're moving forward with the lottery. I also would like, and I don't know if that's here or at a different point, but Biggie, you mentioned the LAUSD resolutions around the charter school and the co-location, and you had identified for us at the prior meeting that really was a big risk point for our school. I know that we had a lot of motivated and activated members of the school community who had, sent notes or went to the relevant board meetings. But I'd like to understand, where that stands, if something goes in, is that something that we're going to see take impact for next year, et cetera?
It's coming a little later as a slide.
Great, thank you.
So from an outreach marketing update, we're doing school tours weekly. The schedule is twofold. We're doing a combination of virtual school informations and in-person campus experiences. The school tours are well attended. Sometimes there are people who have very young students that really are a year or even more ahead of their game. So they just want to see what's out there. But overall, I'd say the school tours are well attended and people are really happy and engaged with us, especially when they come to the campus and they like what they see in the classrooms. Casey can say more about the virtual tours because she's doing those. On the campus, we're usually splitting the groups because they are so big that we can't take them around in one big piece. So I get to see and talk to people also when they come to the campus. But Casey, if you want to say a few words to the virtual tours.
Yeah, the virtual tours continue to be pretty well attended. Doing them weekly means that we never have a group that's too large, that I'm not able to really effectively answer all the questions that our families have. The majority of the people who are coming to the virtual tours are either have incoming TKK students or in following years, as Biggie said, TKK students, or sixth grade. Those are where I've seen the most. There's always a few kind of scattered in the other grades, but those two main entry points are where also we're having the most participation in our virtual tours. And they're a really great way to give all of the information to families in a really succinct way. And then I always encourage them to come to the campus if they haven't already to kind of see the space as well. So those continue to be well attended. And I have received positive feedback from my interactions following those virtual tours with families as well.
And then we have 3 events, actually 4. The 4th I should have put there, but it totally slipped my mind. So those are mostly kindergarten events. The one tomorrow evening, WPNS is a forum that we've attended for many years. That's a preschool that is offering like a fair, in-person fair to their families, but they have such a big network nowadays that it's not just their families, it's the whole Westchester area that comes to these to that event. And there are, I'd say, at least 15 if not 20 schools that have booths, and then people walk around and ask their questions about the school. Then on October 22nd, so this week Sunday, is the Del Rey Day. That's at Glen Alla Park. We've done that event also for years now. That's a good event to be around, just for people to see your name and get and recognize the school. But usually it's not that many people who actually ask about the school because they have other things to do around the event. It's also a spelling bee taking place there, so that there are other interesting things for people to do. LMU is usually doing a virtual fair, but they do it in November, which means it's too late for the application for Prop 39. But yet interesting because obviously those people all could apply to our school in January. And then the last one that I didn't put here, on Thursday this week, we have a virtual introduction of our own middle school to our own fifth graders. So we're doing this every year once to be ahead of the game when they all think about applying to other middle schools. So that's this Thursday evening where we explain the program to our families and offer to them that their students can do shadow days and get to know the teachers in middle school. So all interesting things for the students and the families. And then also a part of marketing is the local print advertising. We're working with the Argonaut for a long time now. We've been doing Westchester Living and Venice Living. The Playa Vista is blue because they have just started or are in the process of starting to increase their outreach with a Playa Vista version of that magazine. Chris, when he started Westchester Living and Venice Living, he also signed in the contract a monthly Google advertising that gets us quite a few impressions every month. That is on a monthly basis. The print ad is actually only 4 times a year, and we chose to do those in the time frame September and October for the purposes of Prop 39, and then January and February for the purpose of actual applications to the school for the lottery. Niche is also a contract that Chris signed, and we're continuing with them. It's a platform where parents can look up what schools are around in a certain area, and there are also ratings of schools. We have a very good rating on Niche, so it comes up as a very highly performing school for people who would look on Niche. Westchester Hometown News and Playa Vista Direct are both print advertisings. We've only done one ad per year with them, and it's more expensive than the Argonaut and the other two, the Westchester Living and Venice Living. So I'm not sure if that is something that we necessarily want to continue doing. And then we also do Facebook group interactions and social media posts. And the plan would be to increase the usage of this contract that Chris started 3 years ago with Westchester Living and Venice Living. Those contracts are set to expire this year, and they have an automatic renewal if we don't cancel them. As I just said, the print advertising is 4 times a year online. The Google is 12 times a year on a monthly basis. I put there the guaranteed per contract impressions per month is between 5,000 and 10,000. But on the next slide, you'll see that we get many more impressions through Google here. The cost for those is about a little over 2,000 per year for the Westchester Living and the Venice Living. That includes the 4 print ads and the 12 online ads. The addition of the Neighbors of Playa Vista would be another 2,000. And it would be, again, a 3-year contract. And Casey, one more slide, and then we can do questions. So you can see for the last 3 years, Chris started this in September of 21, and it went through, the last data point is September of 23. So you can see that if you look at the online impressions through Google, they are on the average side of almost 20,000 per month. When guaranteed, they are giving between 5 and 10,000. So it seems that it's a good way of spending money and getting the presence for people who look online. We are seeing that many more people are using their phones and doing all these Google searches and niche searches and grade school searches. And so this seems to be a good way of reaching a good number of people. Yes, do you want me to ask Katrin, or are you watching who?
Sorry, I can't. Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead if you wouldn't mind, Biggie, because I
Okay,
can't see the whole
okay.
screen.
Yes, thank you. Is there a way to tell if the Google impressions come from specifically the advertisements in Westchester and Venice Living magazines? Did you have like a unique link? Do you have a way to track it back to the advertisements? How do we know that it's related?
I'm sure it's not related, because Westchester Living and Venice Living are print media. So they are put in the mailboxes of people, and they always have an abundance of interesting stuff for their area. And Westchester, Venice, and Playa Vista are our main areas where we draw students from, because that's where it's the closest. So people have not a long drive to come to us. And so I think the print media is completely separate from what they do through Google. However, they use the same ad. So they converted the print ad into a Google ad, and they are using the same ad on Google, and it comes up on with a certain algorithm behind it, and then we get these impressions.
So basically, what we're looking at here is just the organic visits on the Goethe website, unrelated to any specific advertisements, just split from month to month.
I don't think that's the visits of the Goethe website. These are the impressions that people see when they go to Google and look for schools. Then these come up. I'm not sure, and I asked him, but I'm not sure how many of those actually click on the school and go and look through our website, because from there they could go to the school's website. But I think what they are delivering here, that's why they call it impressions, is just how many times it comes up for people and they see it, not necessarily how many times they click through. So I would need to ask if he can produce those numbers for me. How many people out of these impressions actually research on our website?
And I think it would also be good to see what's the organic reach, right? So how many people go to your website anyways, as opposed to how many perhaps see this ad on Google. So I'm very skeptical about print, especially those little neighborhood publications, and how effective they really are. I've lived in the area for 11 years, never heard of these publications, never seen them. And I think it's very difficult to track the effectiveness of that print money. And I'm just wondering if perhaps, I know we're not talking huge sums, but if they would be better spent in search engine optimization, sort of directly giving all that money to Google and sort of being more direct in boosting us as a school and where we pop up in search results.
I agree with you to some degree. This is just an easy way of doing it, because they have the print media, and we can discuss if really people look at print media or not anymore, but they do the whole work with Google for us. So we would need someone here to do all this if they didn't do it. They convert the ad, they put it on the search engine. So they do all the work. I think that's why Chris signed the contract with them, because we don't have a specialist here in-house who would be able to really work the social media and search engines and all what needs to be done to optimize that. But I agree with you that if we had someone like this, we might be able to do a more targeted version of the money spending than we're doing with this. For us, it's a very good system of since we're not the professionals in that area. Pete?
Yeah, thanks. So I actually have seen Venice Living because we get it, and I have seen the Goethe little advertisement on the back. Went, so I guess the most straightforward thing would be is whether or not it's possible on some application, or maybe it's already there and no one's looked at it, to ask the applicant where they heard of Goethe. And then you could give that same list that you had on the previous slide, and people could just check off which, if they've used one of those, and then we'd know. Otherwise, it's, you know, kind of a guessing game.
And Sam?
Thanks. Two questions. So first, I see that this is part of an auto renew issue, but have we approached them to see if there are terms that we could renegotiate to for that, instead of just taking the auto renewal of the same terms? That's the first question. And then the second one is, I know that Chris had approached us last year about kind of a local charter school group that he was working with some of the different directors. I believe we signed some sort of memorandum of understanding or agreement among them. And it might be worth reaching out to that group to see if they have any search engine optimization firms or other resources that they use, because this might be something, for the total spend that this is that they're asking for, that maybe that money can be better utilized to get that return on investment type issue. That I think that's what Katrin is going to. But I agree with Pete also, if we could have some way of trying to track, if we're going to put funds into each of these, to see if we can track the whether they're effective or not, or whether they're actually returning anyone with interest to the school.
We can definitely add that to the application, that we ask people how they heard about us. I'm not sure what exactly the group is that Chris was working with, so I would need to reach out to him and ask that he puts us in touch with them. I definitely haven't heard from them, so they didn't reach out to us yet, but we can ask Chris about it. And what was your first question? There was something that you wanted to know. Now I forgot it.
I think you covered both of them, because the first was about whether that group had any.
The auto renewal, you said.
Oh yeah, the auto renewal. Yes.
From what he told me, cost has increased. So if it auto renews, it renews to the old price. I'm not a big fan of auto renewals, and that's why I totally was on his case to find out when these things auto renew, so that we could be on time to not auto renew if we didn't like it or want it. So we have a little bit of time. At the same time, like Pete says, the magazine looks nice, and he brings it by every time. And when I get something like that in El Segundo, I at least flip through it, because it looks nice. It's kind of, you think, oh, this is a way of connecting with a community that I usually don't spend much time with, but at least you can see what's going on in a little bit of time by flipping through it. And if just some people see the ad in the print media and then recognize it, that might be already a good thing. How much it actually gets us, it's really hard to say, because we also don't have the tools specifically to follow up on it. I think it's good if we put that on the application. That's one way to find out. Pete?
Yeah, I mean, my colleagues, of course, are 100% correct in that, you know, we really don't know, and as you've said, we really don't know the impact of this, of whether it's beneficial. But I think there's two things that we should consider, and one is that it's a couple $1,000, and that's if you get one student, you've covered the cost. So does all this advertisement bring in one additional student? So that's one thing to, you know, it doesn't require a lot to get break even. But I think more importantly, until we get information back from people answering the question of where they heard about us, you know, we've finally gotten to a point where it seems like we've gained some traction and some notoriety, and we have a bigger waiting list and so on. And again, not to say that this is the cause of that at all, but on the other hand, I wouldn't want to stop what we've been doing in the short term to get to this position before we know whether or not, in fact, this has contributed to it, because we've spent many years trying to attract students. And so I don't think we should not do everything we can until we're absolutely sure that certain avenues are not contributing to additional students. So I would say auto renew, collect the additional information. Once we have that additional information, then we can make a decision on how we want to continue. But it does seem to be contributing to the increase in students. So I say keep status quo for the time being.
Frank?
No, I'm not a big fan of the print media stuff. You know, it depends on the magazine. It depends on the way the ad is presented. Is it graphically appealing? What's the storytelling and all that stuff? You know, I think you're far better off targeting groups on the online audience. So, I mean, I'm okay with an extension, but if you have to commit for another 3 years, you know, is the money gone? Like, are we keeping it on? I'm not a big fan of the publication. What they're circulating here in the Valley, in Sherman Oaks and Encino, is like I think it's called the Boulevard. And, you know, it's a glossy magazine where real estate agents and you know, school consistently, you know, advertise. You know, I flip through it. It's all the same private school all the time. You know, it depends on how it is presented. You know, the presentation is everything in an advertisement, in a commercial. So, you know, I'll go with the flow, whatever the board wants, but I'm not a big fan of the actual print media stuff. It's history. No. Who has a newspaper?
We've spent a bit of time on this. If we could move on, I think I agree. If we want to get this to a vote on the spending, let's add it to the agenda. But in the meantime, let's definitely add something into the application. And Biggie, when is the auto renewal?
The auto renewal would be in sometime February, March.
Okay.
For those two, the question is if we want to add the third, because the third would give kind of the full picture of it. And that pricing would go up if we don't do it soon.
What does that mean, that pricing? Like it's February and March, right?
Right, but they are starting this new Playa Vista, Neighbors of Playa Vista now. So I guess they are trying to sign people up now. Again, I'm also not a big fan of being pushed
so my suggestion would be
quickly,
add that into the application and let's table this until, because won't we do a student survey? When's our student survey?
The student, we do twice. We do one in the fall now, and then one
Can
one
you
in
just,
the
no,
spring.
just one suggestion, sorry, to interrupt. Just do a Google form to the parents who came on new to the school. How did you hear about us?
Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you. Frank.
just
Yeah.
do this, and then
Yeah,
you know, do a
the new parents, exactly.
new
And
parents.
then
how did
let's
But
let's
give them
add
a
it.
list, give them a list of these things to check from and then other, because if you just say, how do you hear from us? They're going to say, oh, Bob told me, and that's not going to be useful.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
And then let's add that to our next discussion item for our next meeting.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Hey guys, I'm losing my internet, so I'm gonna try to hop back on. Sam, do you mind taking over?
I got it. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
we gotta get you back into civilization.
I'll be back shortly.
This is just an overview of our timeline of upcoming events. This is a very difficult or busy year for us. We've received our oversight visit date, which will be December 13th, which means in November, mid-November, we will have to submit all documents to LAUSD. We have an IB reauthorization visit in March. Submission of the documents for that will be beginning of January. And then we have a WASC mid-cycle review visit in April, and the report for that needs to be submitted in March. And then there's charter renewal, which could be prepared next spring, or it could wait another year due to COVID. They had extended charter time frames, and they've extended it one more time. So in theory, ours would have gone till 25, which means we would have submitted our charter renewal in the summer of 24. Now it goes through 26, so we could submit in 25. However, the question is how our data looks like, and if we choose to submit early due to data that would be favorable for a renewal or not. That's why I didn't put a timeline, but we could at the latest apply for charter renewal in the summer of 25. And then this is, Sam, what you were referring to. So LAUSD Board of Education passed the resolution on September 26th. It was a 4-3 vote. So the two people who have submitted the resolution plus two more non-charter friendly board members voted for the resolution, and 3 board members there who are charter friendly voted against it. That means Marina Del Rey Middle School is a community school, which is one of the schools that are in those 3 categories of the resolution. In theory, they all stated multiple times and very adamantly that they will not touch existing co-locations. However, they said also existing co-locations as they are, meaning schools should not have charter material revisions, or should not grow, or should not have any difference to what the status quo is. Which means since we're trying to grow at least by 1 classroom next year, it could open the door for them to say, well, you're not in the status quo, so you're applying for something different. So that's to be seen. After this resolution has passed, the superintendent now has 45 days to draft a policy how this resolution will be implemented in the Prop 39 process, and the Board of Education will vote another time about this policy. So that means, though, that we're applying beginning of November without knowing how this new policy looks like. So there is a certain uncertainty about this whole process and how this will shake out. Obviously, we will submit our application with this campus as our desired campus. And they will accept it like this because at this point there is no new policy, and the new policy might not find approval by the from the Board of Education, so it might take longer. But we don't know at this point when they approve this policy that implements the resolution into the Prop 39 process, if it's before they give us our preliminary offer in February, or if the preliminary offer is given and then the policy is implemented or approved. So this whole year, this time will be a little challenging for us because we will not know until we get that final offer if they will agree for us to stay on this campus, or if there might be an issue. They will have to give us Prop 39 space, but it could be on a different campus. It could be a split campus. That's at the moment, unfortunately, an unknown. Yeah, Sam?
Thanks for the update. And I think this is definitely something that we need to watch and pay attention to and receive, you know, regular updates from the team as they come through. I think it's also important to understand, you know, if there's any sort of potential, you know, work or other challenges that CCSA might be planning, or, you know, how, what the response to this might be. And also, you know, on the other side of it, what other types of mitigation or planning can the administration start doing, or do you need support from the board on anything to really think about, you know, what is the worst case scenario with this, and what do we do to respond to make sure that we have a school responsive to our stakeholder needs next year or the year after. So, you know, as you identify what those are, I'd really appreciate you reaching out to the board and letting us know what we can do. And then also remember, you have a really active parent community too, who, when there are opportunities to step in and help, they've, you know, they really stepped up this past month. So
absolutely.
Frank?
Well, known unknowns, right? That's what they are. And so we can't be held back by the unknowns. So we need to chart our, so unfortunately we are in a reactive position of that. And so, you know, we'll have to do what's right for our school and then have to deal with the fallout. You know, these things are probably beyond our control. So getting all hung up on it, you know, it's nothing we can control. So it's known unknowns. And let's chart forward with what we need, would be my recommendation anyway.
Well, we have the advantage that we have a very good relationship with Marina Del Rey Middle School, number one. And number two, Marina Del Rey Middle School has reduced student numbers, so we've outgrown them. And there is still a good amount of space on this campus with our students here and their students. So in theory, their community school part, where they offer adult classes and stuff for the community where they need classroom space, that's not yet at a point that they would need our classrooms in order to offer that. So we might be in a situation where they say, look, it's a good amount that we're spending on our rent. Why would we not want that revenue as LAUSD? And if the school, the host school or the LAUSD school is okay with it, and we can still be a community school, then we might be okay. So I'm not seeing it yet as an extreme threat, and we need to just work on our relationship and as you said, Sam, follow it very closely every step of the way when we do the application, and what happens in those 45 days when they bring that draft to the Board of Education, because that will already show us in what direction this whole thing might go.
Thanks. I think you can move on.
This is just very briefly. I think I've heard from most of you that they did that you did the Brown Act training that was sent to you as a recording. I will reach out to YMC now to receive those certificates of completion. They said once someone has finished the recording, watching the recording, they can see it, and then they can give us the certificate of completion, and then we have that for our LAUSD oversight binders. So if you haven't watched it, then please do so by October 31st, because at the beginning of November, we have to submit for the first time documents to LAUSD. It's not yet the oversight documents, but there is a first submission of a bunch of documents for compliance, and the Brown Act training is one of those.
I assume they have record for those of us who actually attended it live.
Yes, they do, because I gave your email address when they asked for who is participating, and I assume you participated with the link that was sent to you, and then therefore they would have a record of that. Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Thanks. So is that the end of the leadership update?
Yes and no. It's a separate
Oh,
separate
right. We have
presentation
CASP and iReady, yes.
for the CASP and iReady
Yes.
results.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll start with CASP, but then I also have iReady, but I'm going to also talk a little bit about both as we go through. All right, I'm going to keep it like this so I can easily navigate to the other presentation when I need to. So for last year's CASP, I know we shared kind of an overview at the last meeting, but didn't have that student demographic data populated yet. Now we do. So just to start with an overview of passing rate over time. So if you remember, we had the 2018-19 CASP, and then we went on that break due to COVID. And then 2021-22 was the first year that we started doing CASP again. And then last year was going to be the second year in a row that we've had that. So the red and yellow are the two consecutive years, 2021 and 2022, sorry, 2021-22 and 2022-23. And then the blue is from several years ago, 2018-19. So you can see just from the overall in terms of the percentage of our students who are passing in English language arts, math, and science, that we are making forward progress with those numbers. So we have more students passing those subject areas this last year than we did in 21-22, and we're getting closer to our pre-COVID numbers, as you can see in ELA and math, and actually science even surpassing what we were pre-pandemic. So that's really great to see that forward progress there. Another really positive indicator that we had was with our iReady results. So in the 2021-22 school year, our spring iReady and our CASP results were pretty similar. But then in this last year, our spring iReady and our CASP results were even more similar. So it really was a very good indicator for what we would expect to see in the CASP for that year. So that's really helpful because that's what our teachers have been using to guide their in-class intervention, what we have been using to identify students for additional support outside of their homeroom classes. Looking at the math distribution over time, again, we have the 3 last years that were tested. So 2018-19, 2021-22, and then last year, 2022-23. This shows the breakdown for all of the different bands. So the blue is exceeding the standard. The green is meeting the standard. Yellow is nearly meeting the standard, and then red is not meeting the standard. So you can see from last year to this year, while we have more students who were in that standard not met group, our overall number of students in exceeding the standard increased. So that's really, really good. This is what we want to watch really closely, especially looking from last year's students to this year's, 2 years ago students to last year's students, and seeing the difference between the nearly meet and the not met. We need to use our iReady data to identify who are those students who are not progressing enough year to year to continue moving upward in these bands. When we look at the breakdown by grade level, comparing 2021-22 in the blue to last year, 2022-23 in the orange, you can see that we're pretty similar along both. Some of our grade levels like 4th and 5th grade and then 7th grade performed better than in the prior year. But then in some of the years, you can see like 3rd grade and 6th grade, there was a little bit of a drop there in terms of the percentage of students who were passing. So that would be the meeting or exceeding standards areas. And when we go down to look at our student groups by race and ethnicity, again, pretty similar. Our positives were our students who identify as Black or African American. We had a big increase there from 28% to 44% in math, which is fantastic. All of the other grades are all of the other groups are pretty similar, although there was a slight downtick in each of those. So 67 to 60% for our Asian students, 88 down to 85 for white, 50 down to 43 for Hispanic or Latino, and then 77 down to 69 for our students of 2 or more ethnicities. And then looking at special education and our English learners, special education stayed about the same from 17% in 2021-22 to 18% of students who are passing in 2022-23. But our English learners, we saw a really big increase there. This was also represented in the iReady data from 2022-23. Looking at the growth over the year, our English learners in grades 3 through 8, which are the ones who are tested on CASP, they had awesome growth in math throughout the year as well. So as we saw in iReady, then we also see those results on the CASP as well. Next, we'll look at reading on CASP. So, Sam, you want to ask a question about math before I move on? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, can I ask a quick question about the special education designation? So does that cover all students who are on an IEP or a special agreement with the school?
Yes. Yeah. So anyone in grades 3rd through 8th grade who is in special education, meaning they have an individualized education plan.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to reading, again, pretty similar from last year to this year. But again, more students who are in those standard met or standard exceeded areas, and then fewer students in those standard not met. So we saw better growth with moving our students upward in their mastery in reading than we did in math from last year to this year. and also mirroring more closely where we were pre-pandemic with our reading. When we look by grade level, again, very similar, some grades a little bit more. So 4th, 5th grade, we saw increases there. In 3rd grade and 7th grade, though, you can see we saw some dips there. When we went back and compared the iReady data from 2021-22 and 2022-23 for those cohorts of kids moving through, the ones who were really strong that we saw in math earlier, and then also in this reading section, that's a strong group of students kind of moving through. And the ones where we have that dip, that was a group of students that were not as strong overall. All of the iReady data, though, shows really similar growth in terms of the amount of growth that grade levels are making. And so the big variances between here, I think, say more about that particular group of students as they move through year to year, rather than any significant changes from last year to this year in terms of the reading instruction or the math instruction that is going on. Breaking it down by race or ethnicity for our reading. Again, our African American and Black student group, we had a big increase there. I know we had been increasing our numbers of students who are Black or African American as our enrollment has grown over the last couple of years. And so I think having a larger group and really getting to know specifically for those students who are not in that passing section, what needs those kids have has been really helpful in helping our teachers really work in small groups with our students that need that additional support. Again, our Hispanic and Latino students had a little downtick, and our white students also had a little downtick, but then Asian stayed same percentage from last year. I'm sorry, from the year prior to last year. And then our students of 2 or more, pretty similar from 83% to 84% who are passing. And then for special education and our English learners, we didn't have any students in 21-22 who were tested for that reading one. But for this last year, for 22-23, 23% of our students were passing. For special education, you can see in reading, we have a little downtick there in terms of the percentage of students who are meeting or exceeding the standards in reading on the CASP. And then looking at the final state testing subject area, which is science. Science is administered only to 5th and 8th grade. So there are only this last year and the year before, 2 5th grade and 1 8th grade groups who would have been tested. In 2018-19, that was only 5th grade students. We did not have any 8th graders for that year. So the better comparison is to look just at the 2021-22 and 2022-23 data. But you can see we did great growth with the science. From last year to this, sorry, I keep saying last year, from 2 years prior to last year. So 19% compared to 9% of our students who are exceeding the standards. The percentage of standard meeting is pretty similar, 36 and 37, but we really decreased the number of students in that nearly met category. So we were able to push students forward with their science mastery much more last year than we had the year prior. And then again, breaking it down by grade level. So we only have 5th and 8th grade, but both grade levels had an increase in the percentage of students who are meeting or exceeding those standards. Remember, keep in mind, 8th grade, that's only one group of students, and it has been a smaller class size those last 2 years, about 20 students each year, whereas 5th grade has those 2 classes of a full 25 students per class. So you're comparing 50 students with 20 students there in 8th grade. And then looking at science by students, race or ethnicity. So better in all groups except for our Hispanic or Latino. There was a downtick there from 2021-22 to 2022-23, but all our other grade levels had forward progress there. And then in science, there were not any English learners that were administered the science test in those 2 grades, but in special education, we saw a decrease there. So the science for our special ed students in 5th or 8th grade, it decreased from 30% of students who are passing to only 14%. And then I'll just really quickly open our iReady and swap over to that, and then I'll open up for questions all over.
Casey, maybe it's better if we do questions for this first, because the iReady is the beginning of the year, right?
Yeah.
So then it's maybe fresher in the mind.
What I wanted to do really quickly just with the iReady is kind of talk about next steps and where we go with this data, because I know that was one of the questions from the previous board meeting. And then I can always go back and show both documents. So for our beginning of the year iReady benchmark, I wanted to start just kind of with our takeaways of where we are so far. So our beginning of the year assessment, which we always do in these first couple months of school, shows really similar results as in our prior years of administering iReady in both English language arts and math. So we're still seeing increased needs for support in those early primary grades, particularly 1st and 2nd, as well as the beginning of middle school, so 6th and 7th grade, and that's been consistent over the last couple of years. And then when comparing our cohorts as they grow throughout the year, we're seeing an overall increase in the percentage of tier 1 students. So for example, our students in 2022-23 who were in 1st grade last year and now in 2nd grade this year, more of those students tested in this beginning of the year assessment as being at or above grade level than they did in 1st grade. So looking at those cohorts as they grow, even though overall it's similar numbers comparing 1st grade to 1st grade, if you look at 1st grade from one year to 2nd grade the following, it's an increase. And that's consistent across the all of the grade levels there. The iReady data I don't have available as a breakdown by student demographics. That data is still being updated in iReady's system. If you remember last year at the beginning of the year, we had a little delay with the student group data because some students were showing in iReady as not assigned to any student group. And so that really, we have about 100 students right now who are showing as not connected to a student group. So that really skews the data. So I didn't want to show you something that is going to look totally different once we have all students correctly categorized. And that's an internal Clever to iReady, which builds off of PowerSchool issue that we're fixing. For our students who are identified as tier 3, which would be the students who on CASP are in that red standard not met section, intervention services are being provided for them during the school day. So their classroom teachers already know who is in that tier 3 from the moment that they finish doing their reading assessment and their math assessment. And they have been working with them in small groups in the classroom, one-on-one if needed, to help provide support immediately. And then we also have our intervention teacher to provide additional support. One of the staffing challenges that we're working through is our current intervention teacher that we had hired for this year is filling one of those long-term sub positions. So Biggie and I have been working with a substitute for the intervention position who we have used in prior years and is really effective with our students to provide that interim support until Ms. Crosta, who is our intervention teacher, is able to return to her intervention role. We also have the Expanded Learning Opportunities program. That's that extended day program with all of that grant money that we started receiving last year for the additional 30 days of school, or not school, but program throughout the school year and a 9-hour day on campus. And so Biggie and I are updating what the activities are in the Expanded Learning Opportunities program to really meet the needs of our students who are in those tier 2 and tier 3 categories based off of the initial iReady assessment data. So making sure that we've got tutoring sessions after school in both reading and math, and targeting our tier 3 and tier 2 students first to fill those classes up so they really get the academic support that they need at the end of the day. And then so the overall for our iReady reading, which was started in August, and right now we just have a couple kindergarten students who are wrapping those up, is that we had about 21% of students who are at risk for tier 3, 35% at risk for tier 2, and 44% who are in tier 1. In August of 2022, we had 19% at risk for tier 3, so really close to that 21, 37% at tier 2, really close to our 35, and then 44% at tier 1. So really similar to the year prior. And then when you look at the grade level breakdown for reading, you can see it's our 6th, 7th grade groups that are starting the year off kind of with those biggest delays or students identified in tier 3, which is 2 or more grade levels below. You don't see so much in grade 1, but we see a lot in grade 2. The reason we flagged grade 1, even though we only have 4% of students who are 2 grade levels below, is because even though there's technically not very farther below kindergarten you can go, the amount of students who are in that tier 2 group, that 81%, that means they're performing at a kindergarten, and some of them might be beginning of kindergarten level. And so for reading, we wanted to make sure that our 1st grade and our 2nd grade were doing really targeted additional support in those grade levels first, as well as with our 6th and 7th grade. You can see 8th grade also, we have a significant group of students who are in that tier 2. And so making sure that the teachers have the resources to do additional support in reading to bump those kids up to tier 1 has been the focus at the beginning of the year. And then for math, again, really similar to what we saw in reading for the beginning of the year. We have fewer students who are at risk for tier 3 in math, only 16%, but we had more students who are in that tier 2 category. So 50% of students tested at the beginning of the year as being in tier 2. And then tier 1, we had 35%. So that's on grade level or above. But if you look at last year's beginning of the year, assessment data, you can see again, it's really similar. We had 18% at risk for tier 3, 53% at tier 2, and then 29% at tier 1. So even though we have a lot of students who are in this tier 2 and tier 3 in both reading and math, what we know from looking at last year and the years before data from iReady with their growth and where their CASP results were, we know that if we continue with the intervention and support that we have planned and in place for them, that they should be able to make those gains throughout the year. And then for math, again, really similar to what we saw with the reading results for those beginning of the year math assessments. So again, grade 1 has the fewest percentage of students who are at or above grade level, but 2nd grade, we also have a lot. 3rd grade in math, we're seeing a need as well as 4th grade. But overall, those 2 or more grade levels below are much less. But then again, you know, we have our 6th grade, 7th grade. We've got a lot of students in that tier 3 group for 7th grade that are identified for additional support. And so with that, I'll open up for questions, and I can reshare either document and go to whichever specific slide anyone would like to look at again.
Great, thanks, Casey. Frank, let's start with you.
Can we start with Pete as the subject matter expert? That would be my suggestion, and then we build on that. Perfect.
Pete.
Oh, I should have been paying attention, huh? So I think the results look really good. I guess one of the things that we should always keep in mind, especially if we're looking for English learner results on English language arts, because there's a very low percentage of students that are proficient, is that by definition they're not proficient really because they're learning English, so they would be unlikely to be proficient on the English exam. So, when you see that only 23% are meeting proficiency, that's not surprising at all. In fact, that is surprising in the fact that it's that many. I think what we've seen across the country is that there was a dip in performance, and we've seen that here as well. And that it's taking longer for kids to catch back up. And so I think you're right on target, and I think doing a good job there, particularly in science, which I think is good. I think a really, really good improvement for the African-American subgroup, which is doubly good. One, because it's a growing group, and two, because it was lagging behind. So I think those results are really good. Certainly a little bit concerning with the Hispanic group, because that probably is our largest group. So we got to keep an eye on that one. So all of those CASP results, I think, I think overall very positive. I think the one thing that where I'd like to see some more thinking about is in terms of the iReady results, is that yes, the iReady assessment scores are going to be highly correlated with the CASP scores, but it's a question of whether or not iReady is contributing to the good scores, or is just concomitant to the, trying to think of a better word than that, it is happening simultaneously. In other words, a student that does well is doing well both on iReady and on CASP. It's not that doing the iReady program is improving their CASP scores. So the question is, so that's not that, I'm not saying that it is or isn't. It's a question of whether iReady is actually improving performance and is a worthy program to administer. And so I think to get at that, one of the things is the identification and understanding more, not now, but at some point, understanding specifically what treatments are given to students when they're on tier 3, or is it tier 1? I don't know which one is the lowest tier, but so that one can track specifically what those interventions are, and then know how those interventions are, to say, oh, they're going to get something, but what is that something, and how do we know they've gotten it and it's having any impact? And two, I know iReady has their personalized learning. I don't know how much that's being used, but certainly iReady provides you with information on time that they're using the lesson and lessons past. And so it might be useful to use those data that are available to you to see whether or not spending time on the personalized learning and passing those lessons are predictive of doing better on SBAC. And my sense is that it will be. And so that will be a good measure to keep track of, because you can see by teacher who's using those tools and who's not. And so you can follow up with them and say, hey, your kids are only spending 10 minutes a week, and iReady suggests 30 to 45 minutes, and so on and so forth. And so doing those things would give a much stronger sense that iReady program is actually impacting results, as opposed to just being kind of following along with the results that CASP is already providing us. That was it. That's all I got.
Thanks, Pete. Frank?
So I think it's a cohort problem or challenge, not a problem, right? I think it's, maybe all the kids which are like maturing to school, it's always the same kids potentially, right? So they can catch up for what reason or one or the other, which is beyond our control. I think it would be interesting to see. So also my concerns with iReady, I've been a user with Max when he was in school. I think it's a good program, right? It helps him reestablish the standards. But the concern is that the iReady results at the beginning of the year and the CASP results are like so highly correlated. Why is there no improvement? Question mark, right? You have an answer? You want to?
I do. It's actually not the beginning of the year ones. It's the end of the year. So last year's end of with last year's end of year CASP results are really closely correlated. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so then that answers my question. And maybe, Pete, I want to just reach out to you again. This is a very descriptive analysis. Maybe there is a data science project for one of your students in there. And we can have a data scientist look at the data and find maybe correlations, you know, and look at the cohort things, because Casey, you're describing it really well, right? But I was thinking maybe there is like more math behind it, you know, or more data science, which you could find trends and stuff and cohorts and identify that. And maybe, you know, Pete, I'm just reaching out to you here on the spot without talking to you, but maybe there is a research project for one of your educational students.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm currently working on an evaluation of the iReady program in a different school district. And iReady, some other university is offering the 11 million students of data for people to write proposals to do analyses on. So it is a big question about the efficacy of iReady as a program. The issue with so you mentioned a couple of things like cohort and the correlations. It's difficult to, and I'm not saying that something can't be done, but it is difficult to untangle something in a single school because the sample sizes are really small, and so it's hard to draw any kind of generalizable conclusions from those small samples.
Gotcha. So, and so then as a final, right, I mean, Kathy, maybe if you can, you know, in your analysis going forward, right, maybe you can say, look, you know, we have these students, we have like 50% or the 70% are, you know, of the students are almost there. Performance goes up and down, you know, it's a snapshot at a time, at any one point in time. It's like in sports, you know, performance goes up and down. You can't just program it. It's just not possible. But maybe there is a, especially test performance, right? So maybe there is a data point for the future where you can say, yeah, I mean, we have, without naming the students or what identifying is, but there is a cohort issue here, right? Over the years, as they go through the classes. And we were, you know, unfortunately, we were unable to solve it, you know, and it may not be solvable, you know, because it's just that's the way the kids are structured, and it's not like input here makes output there. It just doesn't work that way. That's all. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Frank. Katrin?
I don't have any additional questions or comments right now. Thank you.
Thanks. I had one question, which was really focusing back on the special education students. You don't have to pull up the slides, but is that an issue of low population, so that it, you know, what's driving that? What can we do to really help those students more? Because that was the numbers that stuck out at me on that CASBON.
Yeah, it is a relatively smaller group for us in comparison, especially when we're looking like at our race and ethnicity student groups. Our special ed population is one of our smaller student groups. I think because the nature of special ed is that it's so unique to each student. So like when we're going through our annual meetings with families and we're looking at progress, we might have students who are making really great progress, but they're still 2 grade levels below. So it's hard to categorize as a whole, like here's the thing that is impacting special ed. Just like all of our other kids, you know, the pandemic, distance learning, it had an effect on everyone. I think what has been really helpful is we've had consistency with our resource teacher here on site. And over the last few years, even when we transitioned from Mr. Michelson and him moving on, we still kept the core of our special ed team the same. So we have, even though there's been transition now on the admin role and what we're playing in this team, our key players are still the same. And we have been able to have conversations about our service providers and changing those out as we see that we're not really getting the effectiveness that we want from different services. And so I think we have Scott really started building a strong team, and that has continued even though he's gone on, and we've got now Kirsten who's taking over that specifically. So I think it's definitely something like with our student groups, even, you know, our small number of ELs or our small number of Black and African American students, relatively speaking. It's still something to watch and to make sure that we're doing everything we can individually for these kids, as well as a SPED team as a whole, making sure that our program is really sound. I think in the time that I've been here at the school, our SPED program in particular has gotten more and more and more better at communication with families and with teachers, at sharing resources from service providers to classroom teachers to families. And I think that over time really makes a big difference for our students.
Great, thanks. Yusir, I see you're back. I think you missed a lot of the presentation, but did you have any questions on the CASP or iReady testing information?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Great. With that, Casey and Biggie, is there more on the leadership update?
Nope.
All right. So Yusir, I can hand it back to you to take over on the finance committee items.
Perfect, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the financials for September 2023. Do I have a second?
I
I'll
do.
second.
Oh no, I do. Sorry.
It's from Frank. All right, go ahead, Ryan and Frank.
Hello, everyone.
Mostly Ryan.
Yes, I can begin. Do I have permission to share my screen for the group?
Hold on one moment, Ryan.
Thank you.
Yes, you do.
Can everyone see my screen okay? Yes, good. All right. So today I have our September 2023 dashboard. And with this financial projection, we have actual enrollment data through month 1. And I wanted to stop and talk about that for just a moment, because we are at the end of month 1, we had 443 students enrolled compared to 430 as our budgeted enrollment number. And that's great. 13 students more than budget is going to translate into higher income and revenue for the year. But I also wanted to pause and stop and discuss the average daily attendance rate. So average daily attendance through month 1 was 97.1%. And I just think that that is a really great number to have. We budgeted 95%. And at the close of month 1, I just wanted to, acknowledge that this is a very good month 1 average daily attendance percentage in comparison to what I've seen, because a lot of schools are still struggling with absences after the pandemic. And I just wanted to acknowledge that this is really great at the close of month 1. And I also wanted to acknowledge that while we are experiencing higher enrollment and higher ADA at this point in time, our financials have not been updated to reflect the higher enrollment to be conservative. For example, we're still forecasting 430 students for the year, and as each month goes by that we're achieving higher ADA, we'll achieve higher revenue at this point in time. So I did want to point that out. While we do have higher enrollment, it's currently not, we're not counting on it for revenue in this model. Looking at the expense side, total revenue for the year so far is coming in about 27,000 higher than budget. The main driver there is the additional average daily attendance. On the expense side, we're pretty close to budget. We're about $7,000 off than what we originally board approved. But I wanted to discuss the variances because I met we had an in-person finance committee meeting where we went through budget updates to make sure that we had a good idea about enrollment for the year, a good idea on expenses for the year as the first, month of school concluded, where we're at with staffing, and all updates were made. And as you can see here, our certificated salaries, we're looking at about $48,000 in savings, but based on the staffing plan, it's offset based on by additional classified salaries. So it's kind of a wash, but it's not the exact staffing plan that we had in the original budget. Through September, we've realized some savings in benefits. The big driver there is savings in the first 3 months of health and welfare. But because we have less certificated salaries, we're also seeing a lower expense for CalSTRS for the year. That looks like a trend that's going to continue, but as of right now, we're only realizing savings as it comes in. The only overrun to describe is the same expense that we described in the previous board meeting in operating expenditures. Our advertisement and recruitment for the executive director search is about 14,000 higher than we originally planned for the year. And that's based on actual expenses so far. That's not a projection. That is a true overrun for the year in operating expenses. All in all, through September, based on very strong month one enrollment and updating everything based on current staffing and projected staffing for the remainder of the year, we're looking at net income of about $30,000. And again, net income of about $30,000, not adjusting our enrollment projections upward, even though we know that we have more students than originally budgeted for. On the cash side, we ended September with just under 2.5 million in the bank, and we are projecting year-end cash of $2.3 million. I did want to point out that at the end of last fiscal year, we had a very large receivable of about $1 million. And as of September 30th, all but 150,000 of it has come in. Within this packet, I also have notes to the financials that go over what I've highlighted in this presentation. We also have our income statement and our balance sheet, as well as the check register for the month that was reviewed in detail during our finance committee meeting. It's sorted from largest payment to smallest payment, not by check number. If anyone has any questions, you can ask during this meeting related to the check register or at a later date if something comes to mind after the fact. And that concludes my September presentation.
Frank, questions, comments?
Yeah, just comments. So we actually met face to face last Thursday, first time in a very long time, and at the EXED. So there's a lot of savings in this budget. It's a lot of buffer in this budget, right? So we don't need to do anything. I think if we continue to do what we're going to do, it's good. The question I have is, which I, in the budget review, I said or my question was, is there anything else we could do to administer to help with the administration of the upcoming, events, meaning, the staffing wise in regards to CASP, WASC, and oversight visit, whether there's any help needed. I don't want anybody to go crazy here from the administrative point of view. The other thing is there are ELOP funds which need to be spent this year. How can they be reallocated? Maybe or not reallocated, but what can we do with it, right? In order to spend the money properly. And third of all, it's like that wasn't discussed, but that is one of my point. If we have some lever, is it maybe prudent or necessary? I can't answer that, to hire maybe additional help with the classroom for these students who may need it. So I want to leave it there with you, and it's basically saying this is a good budget and we're going to make budget if everything goes well. And there's enough savings to actually maybe make some investments this year. So these are my comments.
Sam?
No further questions. Thanks.
Pete?
Nothing from me.
Katrin?
Nothing from me either.
All right, if there's nothing further, all in favor to approve the financials for September 2023? Frank?
Yes.
Sam?
Yeah.
Pete?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
That is a yes for me as well. Update on finance committee membership, Biggie?
Unfortunately, there's not any update, so nobody has come forward to be being interested in serving on the finance committee, not from the families, so parent member, nor from the staff. So at this point, it's still just Frank and I. We are continuing to have the paragraph on our communications that we're sending out to families to say that we are looking for a member for the finance committee. And I think Casey continues to have the request on the weekly update for staff, but as of right now, it doesn't look like we have a taker.
All right. I mean, listen, it's the best we can do, and I think we just keep our eyes out, and then if you guys see anyone who's interested, who has a background, or parents that want to get involved, like it's just a matter of networking and getting them to do it. What about from a admin standpoint, or a staff standpoint? Do we have any volunteers? So no, Casey.
I mean, no other staff. I'm happy to join, but none of our other staff have expressed any interest.
I know you've got your weekly stand-up, right, with the teachers. Have you pushed it there?
We haven't had, we first introduced it in a staff meeting and talked it up. This is not best timing for teachers to volunteer to add more, because next week is conferences. We've continued to try to recruit people, but I think it's time also for us to have specific one-on-one conversations with people who we think might just need a little push to be.
Agreed. If you can just keep that on, and then I'd appreciate it, because I would like to have a membership that's a little bit more diverse. And let's keep it on the agenda for next time. That'd be great. And in the meantime, Sam or Katrin, if you know any parents that want to get more involved, we'd appreciate it. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah. Thanks. We have a pretty active WhatsApp group for the fourth grade, where I've tried to make some pitches there, but I know we also have some engagement opportunities with parents coming up. We have our if maybe we could have a sign up even at the parent run walk thing that we're doing on Friday mornings now. We have that one coming up, or have something up at the Burton Chase event this Sunday, just to put it in front of people's faces in a different way, and just remind people that there is this opportunity, because that might be something that they can grab onto there, because it could be that they're not even paying attention to it anymore in the Tuesday briefing.
Hello?
Sorry.
We can hear you.
Sorry. Frank, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe we'll put, we bring in an outsider from school and just to increase like some representation there, because it shouldn't be BNI.
Well, I don't know if you can do an outsider from the school because I think the membership is a teacher, a parent, and admin and executive director. But I do think, in my experience, it's like those one-on-one sessions that you have with parents sometimes. Like, you guys have that like dance party thing. Like that's when I got our first finance committee like member. I actually think it was Allison's husband, if I'm not mistaken, the first year, like 2 or 3 years ago or something like that. So just do your best, but if someone wants to get involved or say like, hey, you could really help us out, and I mean, things will listen. I think the school's done a great job at becoming very, very stable, but I do recall years in the past where the budget was a big thing where people get up in arms about. So dangle that carrot, because it's you're on the forefront of making the budget for the school for the next year, and then projections for 3 to 5. So I'd appreciate it. But thank you guys. I appreciate you guys giving us the feedback. Any other questions, comments? All right, then new business. I think we talked about adding the finance committee membership to our meeting next month, and also would love to see some feedback on the potential impact of the print ads. So would look forward to that. Biggie, anything else I might have missed?
No, but I'll find the list of what should be on the November agenda, but no, nothing at that point.
All right, thank you. All right, guys, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, Sam.
That's from Sam. All right, all in favor? Frank?
Yes.
Sam?
Yes.
Pete?
He'd left. He sent a message that he had to get his daughter.
No, that's fine. Katrin?
Yes.
All right, meeting is adjourned. And thank you, everybody. We'll talk soon.